You're listening to the Dramatic Show podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Dramatic Show podcast. Guys, we got some very special guests in the building today. We got Daryl Lockhart, his wife Margot, and their son
DJ.
Guys, welcome to the show. We're gonna go a little bit differently here. We're gonna actually do a show about science fiction. Science fiction has been a heavy genre for so many years and so many generations. So we're going to talk a little bit about science fiction today. We're just going to twist it up a little bit. So Daryl, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Sure. So I'm a longtime science fiction fan since literally I would say I was 6 years old. I remember the moment I was having a bad first grade day and my mom introduced me to a show called Star Trek. And it was
Next Generation? Or?
No, it was original series. I'm Gen X, so right. So there was an episode called The Ultimate Computer. So if you've ever seen a movie called Blackula, you know that the brother that plays Blackula was Dr. Daystrom on Star Trek, and which is like this brilliant dude. Yeah. So his deal was he was going to automate the Enterprise, right? You don't need this whole crew. We're going to do this whole thing, right? It was a horrible plan, but I'm 6 years old, and this black dude is face to face with Captain Kirk on the bridge and telling them how stuff is going to go, right? And up until that moment, I was going to be a cop, right? Because the cop was the most authoritative person I'd ever seen in my life.
I don't know. I think every kid wants to be a cop. Like,
I think so too, right?
Mindset,
yeah,
right?
And to further date myself, that was because I used to watch a lot of SWAT, the original SWAT, like not LL Cool J SWAT, but like TJ with the hat turned back SWAT.
TJ Hooker.
No, TJ from SWAT. See, if you don't know 1970s SWAT, that was the dude. He was the weapons guy.
TJ,
right. So I watched that show, and so that's a confrontation that I'd never seen before, and that authority meeting that authority. Then of course Uhura walks onto the bridge, and I'm like, oh, so wait.
Who?
There's Uhura. Who's played by Nichelle Nichols. So there's this really attractive black woman on the bridge of this ship. This really smart brother on the bridge of this ship. What is going on here? And my mom was literally like, this is what the future could look like.
And when she said that, like, what was your first reaction?
That was the day that I learned. You know how the memes go. How old were you when you learned certain things? I was today old that day that I learned what the future meant. Up until that point, for we grew up.
Yeah.
Full context.
Black people made it on the ship that day.
Right. We were, and they worked
space.
there, and they worked there, like they belonged there, like they weren't like. It wasn't like a special episode like Brady Bunch where they had like that one black kid. This was these people's jobs. And so I turned to my mom that day and like, I want to work there one day.
On the Enterprise.
In the future.
With Uhura.
Right. Because if women look like this and dudes are this authoritative, what do you do? And how can I do that?
What you as listeners don't realize, his Uhura is sitting right next to him.
Now, full disclosure, we grew up in the same neighborhood, so those stories are connected, right? So I saw her growing up and decided that, well.
So that was your starship.
That was
the sidewalk was your space bridge
to the future.
Kangaroos,
right?
Were your Enterprise,
right?
Uhura was right there with the bologna sandwich.
Well, not the bologna sandwich. Like you were almost there. She like her family was full on cooks. Like we wasn't cooking like that, but they threw down, which of course helped close the deal. So from that point on, my mom supported really my journey in science fiction, and she took me to the library on a regular basis, museums on a regular basis. I was reading Octavia Butler really early in my teen years, and combined with the jazz that I was listening to. So I was listening to Sun Ra, I was listening to Coltrane, and I was listening to a lot of complex stuff. My mind was getting opened up from like the first grade. And so it's like when you hear Parliament for the first time, right? Like you can't just hear Flashlight and be like, okay, I'm good. This might be a good group. You need to hear the rest of what these brothers are throwing down. Yeah. And so I had to read Samuel R. Delany, and I had to read Octavia Butler, and I had to read comic books. because it was the way to keep that thing fed, right? So back then it was 35 cents. So 35 cents, I was able to follow the Fantastic Four. I was able to learn about Wakandan technology, which of course was Black Panther. Black Panther supplied the Fantastic Four with the Fantastic Car, which was a flying car.
I never knew that.
Right. So this is Fantastic Four also, and Fantastic Four is like a group of four. You all know, the Fantastic Four.
Fantastic, yeah.
Well, Black Panther and Storm end up as members of the Fantastic Four later on as well.
They married, and then at one point, didn't they divorce?
They did, and he becomes Daredevil. So it's a whole thing. Once you get into this track,
Yo, I'm telling you, it's so addictive, man. So addictive.
It
is.
So yeah, so we were so that was really the track that I got onto. I would love to say that it was really unique, but if you listen to a lot of hip hop from the era, science fiction is all in there. Like, you don't have to go as obscure as Doom.
Well, you have to give me a line. You got to tell me about that.
Well, The Adventures of Super Rhymes is half the record is about Superman. It's about him and Lois Lane. It's about his powers. It's like, that's The Adventures of Super Rhymes. That's a 15-minute record.
Spit that verse.
I'm not going to rhyme today, and I'm going to save your listeners the torture of me rhyming for them today. But we've all got the internet, The Adventures of Super Rhymes.
I'll get it next time. Don't worry. I'll get it next time. Don't worry. All right, so Margot,
yes.
let's hear a little bit about your backstory.
Okay, well, to compliment Daryl's backstory, like he said, we grew up in the same neighborhood together.
So where did you guys grow up at? Where are you from? North Carolina? Or?
We're from a small northern town called Brooklyn, New York. It's
the concrete jungle, right?
The concrete jungle. We
grew up in Marcy Projects.
Yeah, we grew up in Marcy Projects.
I grew up in 504. He grew up in 536 Marcy. So
he moved to 532 from Vernon, which makes him a Marcy sort of
hybrid,
right?
I thought I was joking, but I was serious.
Yeah, no, you were very.
And it's mainly because of our age.
Yeah.
And the fact that we lived in Marcy and we're all around the same age.
Yeah. So we grew up in the same neighborhood, and while his mom was introducing him to Star Trek, I'm a couple years older than him, just by like a couple years. Couple. And so while his mom was introduced a little bit, by about 3 years. Okay. 2.5 to 3 years.
She beamed him up.
Right. I saw him with his bow tie. Well, Daryl back in the day, he used to wear like a bow tie, and he used to like always have a book in his hand.
Basically a distinguished looking brother.
Yes. And so he was my sister's friend at the time because he was young to me, because that's a big difference when you're in high school. So he was my sister's friend.
Right.
And then I went away to school and came back and ran into him on the A train, and he had on a tie and he had a book in his hand, and I was like, Little Daryl. And
called him Little Daryl?
No, I didn't, but that's how I thought in my head. I realized very quickly that he was not little by any stretch of the imagination. But
DJ, earmuffs, bro. Earmuffs.
But so while his mom was introducing him to Star Trek, my mom was actively watching it, and I watched it as a result of my mom being into it. So she watched Star Trek, but my mother was also. I grew up with my mom and cousins and stuff, and so not only was I watching Star Trek, but I was watching a lot of kung fu movies, and my sister and I were fighting to watch Spider-Man when we got home from school. And so that was I was not as deep as into it as Dara was. My mom was a community activist, so a lot of my young adult life and childhood was spent in like community meetings, and my mom was she did everything. Like, she was running for everything.
Was it almost so? How close was it to like a Black Panther society level?
Well, when we grew up, it was a lot. When we grew up, the projects gets a bad rap, right? Because at the time there was a rise of crack cocaine at the time and stuff like that. But I always say that it was one of the most, for me, community-oriented experiences that I could never have again. And I think that's true across neighborhoods all across America, especially where there's a heavy concentration of Black and Latino people. I think that there's a sense of community there that no matter how bad the socioeconomics are and the opportunities may not be there, there's a sense of community there. And I grew up within that sense of community. So for me, you know, my mom was a hell raiser, and I watched this woman just like raise hell left and right. She had a 3-day sit-in to keep the police officers
Keep the precinct
right
in the neighborhood.
To keep the precinct in the neighborhood. So I grew up around that kind of power. And for me, science fiction was in the background. You know, like my mom would watch these shows when she came home, or she watched, you know, monster pictures and kung fu movies. And I grew up with a sense of, you know, you do things for your community and be honorable and things like that. And Daryl, when Daryl and I started talking more as friends, because it was a long time. Yeah, we talked as friends for a really long time. I didn't think so.
Well,
were you shy?
I mean,
that was a good question.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I mean, you ignored me for a while because I was younger, right? Not maliciously, right? No, right. But because she was older, like, why take this kid seriously?
Right.
So I was trying, right? But you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't really resonating until later on.
So when you saw him for the first time, did he have a book bag on?
He had a book. No, he had books in his hand, like literally. Like if he had a bag, I don't remember the bag.
Oh no,
this was later. This was like we were about early 20s at that point.
Oh, okay. I was thinking kindergarten.
We were like early 20s.
Yeah.
I don't, like he said, I don't have a whole lot of memory of him when he was a little kid. Like I have a memory of him as it relates to my sister. He was my sister's age. So my sister's same age as him, so 3 years. There's a 3-year difference. I'm older.
I was thinking maybe.
But in high school it was #no R. Kelly. Like in high school it was
R. Kelly.
I'm just saying, I'm not an R. Kelly. No, I do not.
So it's like a freshman and senior.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
No, but.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
The way it was spoken was like
I'm 10 years older. No, but I mean back then, you know, he was a freshman, I was a senior. Do you know what I mean? It's different.
And at a different school.
And I was right. We were at different schools. So I didn't really know. I mean, I knew he was there. I knew his. As a matter of fact, I was friends with his mom before I was friends with him.
That's true.
Without any real, you know, I wasn't like, oh, I want to be friends with you to be friends with Daryl. It was again a reflection of the community.
Yeah.
So she was also active. And so I was looking up to this woman like, oh, you know, and so she introduced me to Octavia Butler at that time as well. And that's when things, we have a very weird, a lot of unpacking to do in our story.
Awesome.
We have a weird story.
The activism part of what your mother was involved in had a lot to do with a lot of community get-together, parades.
Block parties.
There you go.
Right.
So let's talk about that. What happened in New York? Because a lot of people think New York is just horrible. It's pizza, Biggie. They don't know Puerto Rican Day parades. They don't know about a lot of situations out there.
No, we had block parties.
Marcy Day.
Marcy Day was a big day. Still goes on today.
Still to this day.
You know, we had, dancing contests. You know, we had our own community, America's Got Talent type thing. Yeah. We had real judges. You know, it was, growing up in Marcy, yes, it had, the lyrics that you hear, him writing are very real.
Yeah.
That is true. And I also grew up, I was not safe as a young Black girl growing up in the projects. Like I was not safe. I could not take the elevator. So there were those elements. That is true. But I think that, also, I came home, my sister and I were latchkey kids, and we had women in our building like looking out for us as we came home from school. We had a neighbor that if she didn't hear the squeak of our door, by a certain time, she was out in the hallway waiting for my sister and I to come home.
Yeah.
They had my mom's number at work. If my mother was running late, something was wrong with MTA, there was no cell phones. So she knew, okay, I haven't heard, Miss Darlene come in yet, so the girls must be hungry. So come on over here and have some soup and some bread until your mom gets home. So those are...
It's like 227.
Yeah.
Where in comedy shows, they actually portray the lady that looked out for everybody in the community
Absolutely.
as the crazy lady, but she was actually the lady that looked over everybody else in the community.
And my experience in my building was replicated in the buildings across the entire project. Yep. So it wasn't just this, I was not special. It was something that was there. You know, when a kid got killed, you know, I've told my son, I said, you know, I've buried friends before my 18th birthday. These things are not natural, but the community that shows up for you. Like, I understood why it was important to show up at a funeral, you know, even if you didn't know the person that well. Like, I grew up with that understanding that, you know, I didn't know him that well, but my presence there as a community member is important.
Indeed.
So, you know, these are the things that I think get overlooked when we talk about, you know, people who are below a certain economic status. And I think that what I've learned as I've aged and as I've grown older is that my story is not unique, not only just as a Black woman in the project, but it's very true for people who were raised in trailer parks. You know, like, they have those types of experiences. It's a community experience that I think that, you know, I think we're always fighting to get to have in our life, you know, on some level.
There's nothing new under the sun. My dad
Right.
always said that to me. There's nothing new under the sun. Every generation repeats a cycle.
That's exactly right.
And there's always the same event. There's no new creation in an event.
Right.
So we all deal with the same stuff.
That's exactly right.
And then we assimilate. We kind of get through things. You get into anime. You get into your superhero.
Right.
You
That's
get
exactly
into
right.
who you look up to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it creates a sense of, you know, purpose and honor, and just like, you know, what do I, and it brings those questions when you're a kid and you're not being challenged by your teachers or people in your neighborhood, or your family member or your family unit might be toxic, and they're not challenging you with these questions or these like big ideas. That's why, so, you know, comic books and movies, big movies, you know, people complain, oh, there's so many big blockbuster movies. There's a reason why those movies exist and do well. It's because it's given a kid like him a bigger idea. You know, it's just like, no, like when we were coming up, space exploration and the idea of living in space was such a far away abstract idea. We had gone to the moon, but that was about it, right? But no, we laugh at Space Force.
Did we go to the moon?
Well, the actual answer to that question is that none of us in this room have gone,
Right.
but that humanity has gone
Do you believe
and
that for real,
returned.
though?
I do. I do.
You believe what, Daryl?
That humanity has gone to the moon and returned.
What about you, Margot?
Oh, I believe it's happened. I believe it's happened.
The teacher's got the most access to technology there is, right?
What do you think, DJ?
I would say it's real. Yeah.
You think it's real?
Yeah.
Not an illusion?
No.
Okay. While we are on the topic of science fiction, talk to us a little bit about sci-fi generation. You guys talk to a little bit about that.
Sure. So, Sci-Fi Generation, we launched the site officially in 2012, and it came out of just our passion for what we were doing. Before we launched, to give a little bit of context to it, before we launched that, we had a website called blackboxoffice.com.
What was that about?
It was a black cinema blog. We won awards. It was we won
nice.
design awards, editorial awards. We put some writers kind of on the map and sent them on their way. When we came into the scene, there were a bunch of movie blogs, but the representation for African American, for Bollywood, for Nollywood, for international cinema across the diaspora was small. And so we were able to come out and just like, because we had a tradition from early on in our marriage where we would watch Bollywood movies on Sundays. And we were very much aware, because in like hair salons and barbershops, there would be a brother that came through with Nigerian movies. And it's like, oh, okay, this is the new Jennifer. Oh, okay. And so that was just a natural part of our deal. But I didn't see any of that online. Right. It was all like Ain't It Cool News and a bunch of arguing about Tarantino. Yeah. So, while all that was going on, there was no like representation for like an up and coming director. There was kind of no outlet for that person. Right. So we were able to come out and make that kind of impact. What we learned as we did that was that, film was something that we loved, but we wanted to get genre specific because then there were 30 blogs serving the African American community and talking about the same story. So if Deadline would break a story, or if we would break a story, 30 blogs had it. So at that point, it's kind of like, we're writing for clicks. This is not fun.
Right. So what changed at that point?
We decided, my wife gave me great advice, which is similar advice that Stanley got from his wife, which is stop doing stuff that puts you in a position that it feels like work and start enjoying yourself.
Good advice, right, John?
And I looked at what it is I actually enjoyed. And the thing that had been with me my entire life and my entire journey was science fiction and just a science literacy that really opened things up. And so as soon as I made that shift, things started to click into place. So there was a fantastic person who's no longer with NASA Langley, but I will say that the NASA Langley campus has been historically really important in furthering innovation, especially in the African American community in science.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leland Melvin, who you guys may know, hosts a show that's like a robot war show, and he's a really prominent astronaut. Used to be a football player, got injured, and then discovered like that his passion, and actually went to space a couple of times. This is one of the reasons why I know that we've actually been, because I've talked to people who've actually been to space. And it was really early. And as you guys know, as media people, when you're starting a venture, it's like, how do I get more than 3 people to even care of what I'm doing?
I know the feeling.
And Leland was one of the people who told me, just like, look, put your head down and knock this out every day. And you're going to reach the people you're going to reach. If that's 15 people who care, then you and those 15 people are going to have a party. But if of those 15 people, one of their kids is inspired to get into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you've changed the world.
And so the site was doing really well.
The site took off almost immediately.
Yeah.
Almost immediately once we really got focused.
And then, so the site took off really well. And then I was like, well, we need to do a podcast. And it took him a year because it was like we weren't ready.
So it was your idea to come up with the podcast?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was my idea to come up with the podcast. He was a brainchild. He's a brainchild behind a brand. And then I said, well, we need to have.
Podcast is actually really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and give it a plug. Give it a plug.
Thank you.
Plug it.
So it's the Sci-Fi Generation, the podcast, and it's everywhere you podcast. And
we're Spotify.
iTunes,
You guys are syndicated everywhere.
and syndicated everywhere. And I felt like, so we're two weirdos. We're so weird. And so we are. And so we'd be in the house and we'd just be talking, #no weed yet, right? So we would just be talking some wild shit. Like we'd be like, yeah, and then like aliens in the 57th quadrant. And we're just going off with these wild abstract ideas. He's coming in and out the room. He's adding, DJ's coming in and he's saying, and he's like into the conversation and he'll bob out. Like my parents are so weird. And then he'll come back like with another idea later. And we realized, and I realized, and I had to convince him, I was like, this is a show. Like we're kind of weird. And then him and I would just be, it was like we were talking to ourselves about like what we like to watch on TV and streaming and all this stuff. And that's how the show got started. And I said, okay, let's just let's give some structure to conversations we're gonna have anyway,
right?
Because he travels for work, and so we'll be video talking to each other, and the whole you hang up, no you hang up, oh did you see this or did you see this? And so we just realized that we were doing a lot, and let's categorize it and let's just put it in a show. It didn't dawn on me until later that the husband-wife thing was like a little bit of a hook, and that being black was a hook. Like I didn't realize it. I was just like, let's be two people talking about what we like. And then we realized we were the only black people in a space, and we were the only husband-wife in the space. So that's what made it unique. And I think that's why people gravitate to it. Because in the show, I talk about raising DJ, and I have another child. And
you guys got 2 kids.
We have 2 children.
Okay, so you guys got a
came in with a
daughter
relationship. Yeah, I came into a relationship with a child.
Okay.
As I said, we have a lot to unpack with our situation. So because I'm older than him, I went away to college, came home with a PhD in Pampers instead of a degree. And so That's what my dad said. He was just like, oh, this is a nice PhD in Pampers. It's like, I'll run with that. And so, so I came home with PhD in Pampers and, came back home to the project. His mom was pregnant.
Oh.
So she had So her and I are pregnant at the same time. So this is what I'm talking about, community. Like, she just was like, oh, I love you so much. Don't worry about this. You're going to be fine. And she spoke a lot of power into my life. We moved, separated. I went my way. She went her way. He went his way. And then life kept bringing us together. Like, I'd be like walking down the street from lunch at work, bump into him. I'd be at a party, but it was weird. So that's how we got connected.
Did it feel like destiny?
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely felt like. After a while, it was just like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
We even became like sex buddies for a while.
Yep.
Like, that didn't work out really well. Because then it's just like,
So you guys put it in the category as twin souls. You guys ever heard that term before?
No,
but I think that's a great way to.
The worst part about that is I heard a little bit of what you said and looked at DJ.
Oh, the fact that we became sex partners?
He's kind of like leaned back away from the mic and then back towards the mic. And he put his
Or you
hand
gotta
on the
say
mic.
something?
He's about to.
He knows how it works. All right, DJ, how's your life? Let's talk about it.
How's my life?
The Gen Z are in the room.
I mean, not too eventful. I mean, I'm still like
How old are you, DJ?
15.
Okay. Thought about college yet?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about majoring in right now at this point?
Thinking about music education or audio engineering.
Okay. Do you do music now or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a particular genre right now at this point?
Not really. No.
kinda-
It's extracurricular stuff. So
Okay.
like percussion.
Where do you go to school at?
Archico.
Where's that? You know where that? Where's that school at?
It's over in Valentine. It's over in Valentine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Valentine.
Yeah, don't get
got some really
we're
nice-
renters. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. We're there for the school system. Once we figure once he's done with the school system,
We'll see where we go.
let's see where we go.
So all of our listeners who think Neil deGrasse is the only African American in science fiction, you guys know that's now a myth. We have Margot and Daryl who are extremely knowledgeable in the science fiction realm. What are you guys working on in these upcoming months? You guys got any projects coming up within the science fiction? Any type of conferences going on or?
More attending on the conference side than throwing our own. Before doing this, I've been in entertainment and in marketing for a long time, so I know putting on a show is a big deal. So I'd rather attend that party than throw that party. And so on that side, we're not throwing any conferences, but we will be attending a few. We also have, like I was saying earlier, we have a spin-off podcast called Time Capsule, which talks about specific eras. Right now, we're wrapping up the 1970s. The next segment is called Sci-Fi Saturday Morning, which is going to be a comprehensive look at animation and live action science fiction shows that used to run on Saturday morning.
Nice.
Yeah, our goal is toward the end of this year into 2019, we do want to do some more live shows.
Yeah,
But we want to grow
take,
audience some
right.
more. So that's really what our goal for 2019 is, just to settle in, dig deeper, get more downloads, that type of thing, do more outreach, hanging out with people.
Going back to the conferences, you guys ever been to a Comic-Con?
Yeah.
When was the last time you guys been?
What was the last one we went to?
Did you go last year?
Yeah, we went to Heroes Con last year, right? Yeah.
Heroes Con is pretty much.
Where's that one located?
That's here in Charlotte.
In Charlotte?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, Heroes Con is pretty enjoyable. They've had a couple of weird years, but
He's gotten our whole family into cosplay.
Yeah.
But then he doesn't dress up.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Like, we'll all dress up. He made me do a horror one year, which I totally.
It all comes full circle.
I could tell it. I knew that was a horror. I knew it, man.
He made me do it. He made me do it.
I saw her playing with that Gallagher damn keyboard, just keying in shit, doing nothing. And he's standing there back there looking like, look at a horror.
Yeah, I wore the short skirt and everything, had my hair up. Yeah.
You knew it.
He loved it. You loved it.
So that conference is in the fall every year in Charlotte?
It's in June every year here at the Charlotte Convention Center.
Okay.
But yeah, I've done Comic-Con in Los Angeles, San Diego, New York Comic-Con. Yeah. We're invited every year to New York Comic-Con. We've done a couple of things in Orlando. I love the Comic-Con scene. I probably loved it more before it became a thing. But also, E3 is a video game conference in Los Angeles, and that's a lot of fun because you get to see the games actually before they launch, and play some of the stuff in there as well. It's a great scene that you get to bond with people who have similar interests with you, and you get to really kind of dive into something that you're passionate about, and it's literally like in a world, like people have built it, and you get to kind of live in there. And so I love the convention scene.
Yeah. You want to add something to that, Margot?
No, I mean he keeps me, him and DJ, and DJ has more of a role in this than he's even speaking to.
How so?
Well, podcast, website, all that is marketing, right? Like it's all about marketing and building your brand. And DJ is in a generation that keeps us relevant. He's in a generation that, like he'll tell us, stop going to that convention. We need to look at PAX now.
Right.
Like he'll say to us, we need to figure out what to do on Twitch. So he leads us into the next generation, which leads us back to the name of the show, right? Sci-fi generation. You heard Daryl speak about his mom and my mom and how it's passed down, like interests are passed down generation to generation. So while DJ may not have honed in on a genre, one thing that he listens to, and I know this to be true, is because it's on our family Spotify account, is that he listens to a lot of movie soundtracks. So he listens to, so like not just because Black Panther was Black Panther, but he's a John Williams fan. So, that goes handed down generation to generation, and it gets better, right? Because where my music choice is like, people would consider it kind of poppy, right? I'm a Beyonce fan and I like Ariana and all this stuff. I like poppy music. But it's trash. But he has a better musical choice, and he passed that down. Some might argue.
What do you listen to these days, Daryl?
Oh man, wow. I want to listen to these days. That's a tough one. I'm listening to a lot of soundtracks as well, but then I've been away from Japanese jazz for a while, and I'm probably getting back into that a little bit stronger.
Get back into
it? Japanese jazz.
You guys play any instruments yourselves?
He plays more than I do.
He plays keyboard,
I used to be stronger.
He plays trombone. He plays drums. So tell him what you play.
The main two instruments that I actually play are trombone and keyboard.
Nice.
So it's a generational thing that passed down. So we don't know what DJ, if he chooses to have children, what he would pass down to them. But when we thought of the name, we realized that you're part of a generation. You're part of an interest group. You're part of, a generation of science, people who like science, but not just like science fiction and aliens and stuff that we spoke about today. One of the things I mentioned to you on the phone that we talk about with the show, we have a segment, it's the Science News Show. Science News segment, and we share, it was kind of like our answer to like everything being this president right now. So what we did was we added something that said, look, this is what I find interesting that's happening in science right now. Maybe other people might find it interesting too. So that's why, in that segment, you'll hear about when they did advancement with the HPV vaccine. That's stuff that we need to know. When Cassini, that was a huge news story in science that no news outlets really truly covered in the way that we thought they should. It's a big deal, and so we covered that. We covered, like I shared with you, Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa vaccine, the HeLa DNA. And my DNA results that I got back and how we feel about that. And the intersection of it with Black people too, right? Because like with DNA results, some people like, why would you give the government your information like that? Well, I answered that on the show. So it's like things like that. I think that nice 10, 15 minutes just elevates us just a little bit, just gives us a reprieve, just says, oh, no more politics for 5 seconds. Right. And then you walk away saying, oh, I didn't know that. I learned that today. And then you just go back to your regularly scheduled.
Right. You can get back.
That's my favorite part of the show. I like that. You like the streaming part.
No, I don't know if I love the science news part too.
Science news. Yeah. So that's kind of like our answer to stuff.
So. All right. So DJ, you do a lot of research.
Do I do
find out whether you have real Comic-Con fans or Comic-Con people that attend? How many times do you find or get questions about Flat Earth?
How many times do I get questioned on it?
What did you find out about Flat Earth? Is the Earth flat?
No.
Have you been outside of the Earth?
Me? No, not recently. No.
So in this anime world, it's imaginary. It's created for comfort. So if I felt good about Earth being flat, would that be okay?
And if it makes you feel better, I mean, yeah, but that's not the actual case.
So the real statement is
The Earth isn't flat.
Thank you, flat earthers.
Yeah, that's why I don't know why people get attached to that.
Where did that concept come from?
Flat Earth concept is tied directly to people's distrust of government. And so if the only measurement of the Earth being a sphere is what NASA tells you, people feel like NASA's a government agency. So of course they're lying to you. And their reason for lying to you, right, is so that you won't ever test their knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a disc. So like we've gotten like the most passionate flat earthers.
Man.
And the idea is we're on a disc, right? And so the proof of that is if you've ever flown any place, right? How come you never see the other side of the Earth? At first, I used to argue this, man. Like I used to be like, because it's turning and you're going, and then after a while, you know, it's internet arguing in real life, man. It's real like, look, if this makes you feel good to not, I mean, in all reality, it's hilarious and it's disturbing, but there are people who we grew up with who still live on the same block. We grew up in New York City, which everybody outside New York City think is fashion week and all the stuff you go. I know people who are terrified to leave the borough of Brooklyn.
Right, because there's nothing wrong with growing up on the same block. It's
Right.
just the not wanting to leave and not traveling anyplace
And
else.
not
that could
accepting ideas from outside your block.
Right.
And so you're telling me that there is, and I've seen this, like if you go to, one of the great things about being from Brooklyn is you run into Brooklyn people anywhere.
Yeah.
It's true.
Anywhere. I've been in Tokyo, been like, my man, you look similar, right? And it's just like, oh, well, I'm from Flatbush, Marcy, right? And so there's that connection, but then there's a guy outside Tokyo who's never left that area, right? He's never left. Now we flew all the way over there to see all that we could see. That guy's never left that area. So people who have a hard time with that, you're telling me that not only is there a whole world, but there's another side. These people are terrified.
But they're also the cousins of the anti-vaxxers too.
you're exactly right.
I think they're the cousins to the
You're exactly
they're the cousins to the
Anti-vaxxers.
anti-vaxxers. So while he's talking to the flat earthers, I'm talking to a mom in
Usually the West Coast.
Portland,
usually
nice area of Portland. Like, okay, so if you listen to the show, I've had maybe 3 major rants about vaccines.
Yeah.
I do give, and I always say this, I do give a little bit of understanding and leeway to Black people as it pertains to science and medicine, only because of the heinous history that was, everything that's been done to us
Eugenics,
in the name of
all that.
science, right? So I do sometimes when I'm speaking to someone, like I know someone who does not vaccinate her children, and she's Black, and she uses all these facts that I cannot argue with as it pertains to science, right? So I don't go there because I understand the pain and the history, right?
It's one of those.
But-
It's one of those. That's that one instant, that one occasion that person can hold on to and give you the true story that this vaccine had a negative effect,
Yeah,
and you have to respect it.
I do.
And 99% of the time, vaccines
People are
do
fine.
well.
They do.
So
Right.
go back to what you were talking
No,
about. Flat earthers
yeah.
and anti-vaccine people actually have the same argument,
The same thing.
and they're the same people. the same
Anti-government, all this stuff, and so so those are the 2 most interesting topics right now that we like. Is like I like to argue with them because I get a kick out of it, and he's like, "Put your phone down, that's dumb," and I'm just like, "Hold on, I just gotta say one more thing to Mrs. Anti-Vaxxer," and then I'll leave it. But I kind of like have fun with them at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to mess with them,
Yeah.
especially during the lettuce outbreak. That was great. Did you see all those memes that was just like, "Have some lettuce." If you don't believe
Right.
if you don't believe, right, then have some some lettuce. So I thought that was a lot of fun. But that's the show in a nutshell. We like doing it. It's fun. It's a family thing.
Yes.
You got the Marvel Studios hat.
Yes. Yes.
Did you wear your watch?
I did.
You did?
I also have my Tony Stark watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, my Marvel thing, I try to do one little Stan Lee tribute thing as we go on. It was a Stan Lee tribute thing. Now I'm probably in protest until Black Panther wins Best Picture.
Right.
And then, yeah, there are 40 of them. There are like hundreds of them. Stan Lee was a guy from
Originator. He was an originator.
Yeah,
Plenty of writers, plenty of drawers.
But without Steve Ditko and the rest of the guys, like there's no Marvel, right? So yeah, is there another Stan Lee? Oh, there's plenty. Like that's one of the things that drives us to do the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You inspire
Weed
those
kids
Stan
out.
Lees.
Weed those people out. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so those Stans can find Jack and Steve and the rest of those artists and George Perez who's about to retire. It's unfortunate. His work in comics is super influential. We're gonna have plenty more Stan Lees.
Into the universe, into the Spider-Verse, that was just, I've never seen a movie like, I am still in awe of that movie.
That was a really, really good movie. Did you see it, J-Dub?
Oh,
it was actually a really good movie.
You are going to love it. And it was just, it was magical. So yeah, that gave me a lot of hope for the future. Like,
what was that animation style? Was it like a mixture of 3D and 2D or CGI?
Yeah, every graffiti artist has what's called a black book, right? And that's where you put your pieces in the black book and you collect in the black book. What Into the Spider-Verse did was it took that black book, put it on the screen. So you saw Japanese anime influences. You saw literally pieces that will be on the wall done as pieces on a wall, right? So you have traditional illustration styles, because like the body proportions were right. Nobody had crazy wild shoulders, right? And then you had these anime mixed with the graffiti styles. That's what made it unique. Like this graffiti work used to be on trains.
Don't put me in that. Don't put me in that lie. Don't put me in that lie. There's only one person in this room that did illegal graffiti in New York, and it
I'm
was
not saying
me.
you did it.
No, don't put me in that group.
I'm saying you've seen it.
I was in church with Mama.
They point them out.
Yes, I'm definitely guilty as charged.
Don't put me in that. Don't put me in that. I was in church with my Pentecostal mama. She would have had my ass. That was him out there. I think it was. I'm not trying to shout.
Well, statute of limitations is over, so they can't get me now.
Okay. There was only one person underneath them train tracks doing that illegal mess.
But that's one thing about.
You should have saw him a couple years ago. You know how they had the rocks outside the school? So he's all suburbanized now, right? So the rocks outside the school.
Suburbanized.
I was like, we got to do a rock for I want to do a rock for my baby, And he's like, okay. So he's very aloof about a lot of things at first. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I was like, do you have any ideas? What colors do you want? He sprouts out these like primary Marvel colors. And I'm like, okay, I know what's about to go down. So I go to the paint thing and I'm like, do you want me to go with you to the rock? No, I don't need to. No, he's like, sure, you can go with me to the rock. I should have known better. I stood there. I still have pictures. He's sitting there. He gets all into it. And he's like, I'm like.
I didn't have the mask. I was worried. I ain't had a thing.
I was like,
fumes. I was
like, somebody is like in their element. He was like, and it was like, if it was a cartoon, it would have been like, and it was done. And DJ walks by, he's like, yeah, that's what's up. That's cool. And everybody is like, oh my God, that is such a beautiful rock. Who did that? This is just like, this guy is just like, he had to have his primer and it's dripping, can't let it drip. And I was like, whoa, I had never seen him in action.
Do you all have a picture of that?
Level. I do. I have to dig it up on my phone.
Yeah, you're going to have to send that to us.
Yeah, I've seen his work, but I had never seen him in action until The Rock in the suburbs of North Carolina. I was like, what did I take him away from? Like, oh my God. Like, I feel bad.
Yeah, I definitely treated it like a train wall. I was just
right. I was just like, gotta find you a train.
So how'd you guys end up in North Carolina?
We were running from my mama. No point in lying.
Ran from mama.
My mother passed away in September. God bless her soul.
Right.
But
Sorry to hear that.
thank you. But she was quite problematic, and she was one of these moms that if a woman like me wanted to be in a relationship, a healthy one, could not be around my mama. So I had to go. And so we had a meeting of the mind. He was he was like, yo, this is not working out. Your mom's is crazy. And I'm like, that's true. And so we read, at the time he had a job where he could work from home. So we just opened up, what was it, Black Enterprise?
Yeah, we looked at cities for Black folks, basically, that were thriving.
Yeah.
And our options were, we had boiled it down to Dallas or Charlotte.
Right.
And then that summer, the average temperature in in Dallas was like 120 degrees. And so it was like, so North Carolina.
I didn't have locks yet, so
Right.
just like,
It was oppressively hot. So I was not interested in that. So we looked at it and we came down.
yeah,
And was like, okay, and this was before the growth.
right,
Right.
Look, just before.
It was just
You
at the
loved
beginning.
It, though.
Yeah.
Well, I loved it.
You loved it more than I did. It
some
took a while
time
for you.
Yeah, it took some time for you. But we wanted a better life for him. So we were like, we needed to really get our adulting on, and now I think he regrets that. You wish we stayed in New York, right? Or are you glad to be here?
I don't think it really would have made a difference. To me.
Okay.
Like,
We would have been crazy no matter where. Okay.
Well, it seems like, North Carolina seemed like it was a good move for you guys.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it does. We definitely thrived when we got here. It has become home.
For our marriage, especially.
Yeah.
For our
Yeah.
marriages, it was
really,
really
really
good.
did.
And I'm sorry, how long have you guys been married?
20. No, what year?
Married
is this?
officially.
Okay, so what year is this?
This is 2019. So
You gotta love
18 years?
Does it really? You
Is
gotta
it
love a
18
couple
years?
that's not
18
going.
years.
18
You got
years.
it.
It's 18 years. Yeah, because we lived. Like I told you, everything was so complicated. So we lived together. We dated. I feel like it's a lifetime. So when someone asks us about marriage, it's like it's
our default answer
we
is
say
like
20
25.
We say 20, 25 years.
But we've only been officially married. for
Officially married, yeah, because we moved in together.
I like the average answer. 25 years.
Yeah, that sounds. We'll probably say 20, 25 years for the next 20,
Right.
25 years.
Yeah, when we
That's
were
a
30.
good- That's a
43
good
for like
solution.
4 years.
Yeah, I hear you.
Only
Yeah.
because I forgot how old I was.
Yeah. I had a friend today who was like, "You actually
Cocaine's
forgot
a hell
how
of a
old she
drug.
was." Yeah, it is.
Good stuff. So, guys, if new listeners, new audiences, and people that want to follow you guys, how can they reach out to you? And we'll start with you, Daryl.
It couldn't be easier. We're Sci-Fi Generation everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think we're still on Pinterest.
Pinterest.
Like we're
everywhere.
So at Sci-Fi Generation, and you are talking to us.
All right.
Yeah.
Margot, what
Same.
about you?
Sci-Fi Generation. I'm Miss Margot _ on Instagram, but that's my mom page. So it's just kind of like, me doing family stuff there. But the business, the brand is Sci-Fi Generation everywhere. So
All right.
yeah,
What about,
I'm not very interesting. The brand is much more interesting than I am.
and what about you, DJ? How can they get in touch with you?
I'm with them. I don't
You don't want to increase your following on Instagram and be like cool in school? Is that the thing?
I don't use Instagram. I don't post on it that much. Like the
Right. Are you on Snap? Give out your Snap. No.
Nah, I
You don't
can't do
want
that.
to-
Nah,
okay.
come on.
Again, man, that was a good show. J-Dub, you got any closing remarks?
Flat Earth doesn't exist. I can promise you that. I got fat. I couldn't look down. I couldn't see my dick. So, see my ass.
And again, to my listening audience, this will not be the last time that you hear from Daryl and Margot. We got some stuff in the pipeline. So again, guys, you guys stay tuned. This season is going to be a really good season. Again, this is the Dramatic Show podcast, and we are signing out.
Thanks for having me.
You've just listened to the Dramatic Show podcast with your host, Dramatic.